The road that loops forever. Some roads take you home. Some roads take you somewhere else. And some roads never let you leave. The shortcut. I was driving home late at night, exhausted after a long shift at work. It was nearly 2 a.m., and the highway was empty, just miles of darkness stretching in front of me. My GPS suddenly pinged. Faster route available. Save 15 minutes? I barely glanced at the screen before tapping yes. A left turn off the highway. A narrow, 2-lane road lined with trees. I didn't think twice, but I should have. The first signs. The road was silent, no streetlights, no signs, just dark trees pressing in from both sides. My headlights barely cut through the blackness. I checked the GPS, 10 more miles. Then I saw it, the first sign that something was wrong. A dead deer on the side of the road. Its body was twisted, legs at impossible angles. Its eyes were wide open, like it had seen something before it died. I swallowed hard and kept driving. I should have turned around. The first loop, a few minutes later, I saw it again. The same deer, same position, same wide, staring eyes, my stomach twisted. Had I just driven in a circle? I checked my GPS. Still 8 miles left. I must have imagined it. But then, just up ahead, a road sign. It read, "Road closed ahead." But the road wasn't closed. It stretched endlessly into the darkness. I should have turned around, but I didn't. The radio static, I kept driving. The GPS still insisted I had miles to go. Then, my radio silent until now, crackled with static, a voice, faint, whispering. "Keep driving, don't stop." I turned the radio off, but the whispers didn't stop. They were coming from the back seat. I slammed the brakes and turned around. Nothing, just an empty car. The woman on the side of the road. I pressed on, faster this time. Then up ahead I saw her, a woman in a white dress, standing on the side of the road, just at the edge of the trees, not waving, not moving, just watching. As I passed, I forced myself not to look at her face. I don't know why. Something inside me whispered, if you look at her, she will follow you. And then, the deer, dead on the side of the road. Again, I slammed the brakes. My hands were shaking. I checked the GPS. Still 8 miles left. The road wasn't taking me home. I was stuck. The endless drive, I tried everything. I turned around. I drove back the way I came. But no matter what, I always ended up right back where I started. The deer, the woman, the road sign, looping, forever. I screamed, punched the steering wheel. My gas was running low, and then I heard it. The radio crackled on, a voice, clear this time. You have to make a choice. Keep driving or get out. The choice. I looked at the road ahead, at the woman, now closer than before, at the deer, its eyes locked onto mine. I didn't want to stop, but I couldn't keep driving forever. So, with a deep breath, I opened the car door and stepped out. The last thing I remember, cold air wrapped around me like a living thing. The trees seemed to lean closer, and then I felt hands on my shoulders. The woman was behind me, whispering, "You're free now." The world spun, and everything went dark. I woke up on the highway. I gasped, sitting up. I was lying on the shoulder of the highway. Cars rushed past me. My car was gone. My phone, dead. But I was out. I was free. Or so I thought, until I saw the road sign. Road closed ahead. And behind me, the sound of tires on gravel. Another car, another driver, taking the same shortcut. Some roads never end. I tried to warn them. I screamed, ran into the road, but their car drove right through me, like I wasn't even there, like I had never escaped at all. I turned slowly and saw her, the woman in white, smiling, whispering, "Keep driving, don't stop." I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out, because now I was part of the road too, and no one ever really leaves. My dog growls at something I can't see. Dogs are supposed to protect us. But what if they're seeing something we can't? What if their growls are a warning we don't understand? Chapter 1. It started with a low growl. I never thought much about the way my dog Baxter reacted to shadows. He was a rescue, a mixed breed with big, intelligent eyes and a loyal heart. Ever since I brought him home, he'd been my shadow, following me from room to room, always watching. But lately, he had been acting strange. It started a few weeks ago. Late at night, as I sat on the couch, lost in my phone, Baxter suddenly stiffened. His ears perked, his tail went rigid. And then, a growl. Low, guttural, deep. The kind of sound I'd never heard from him before. I looked up. Nothing was there. "Bax," I called softly, His eyes didn't move from the empty corner of the room. His lips curled, baring sharp teeth. A deep, warning snarl rumbled in his chest. And that's when I realized Baxter wasn't just looking at something, he was afraid of it. Chapter 2: The Empty Hallway. At first I tried to brush it off. Dogs are weird sometimes, right? Maybe he smelled something. Maybe a distant sound set him off. But then it got worse. One night I was brushing my teeth when I heard it again. That same low, menacing growl. I turned, heart pounding. Baxter stood in the hallway, his body rigid, his eyes locked on nothing. The hallway was empty, but he refused to move. His nails scraped against the hardwood as he lowered himself into a defensive stance. And then his head snapped to the side, like he was following something. Something moving, something I couldn't see. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I swallowed hard, stepping past him, forcing myself to check. Nothing, just darkness. I exhaled, trying to calm my racing heart, and that's when the bathroom door slammed shut behind me. Chapter 3. Scratching in the walls. I didn't sleep that night. I told myself it was the wind, maybe a draft, maybe my nerves. But Baxter knew better. He refused to come into my room, standing in the doorway with his tail tucked, his body trembling. And then, the scratching began. Soft at first, a slow, rhythmic scraping against the walls. I held my breath, ears straining. Baxter's head jerked toward the sound. His growl deepened. The scratching moved, from one wall to another, then to the ceiling. Inside the walls, I sat frozen, gripping my blanket, unable to move. Something was in there. Something was crawling. Baxter suddenly lunged at the wall. His claws raked against the plaster, his teeth bared, snapping at empty air. I barely slept that night, but when the morning came, there were deep scratches on the wall. Not from Baxter. They were too high up, like something had been clawing its way out. Chapter 4: The Invisible Intruder. The next few nights were worse. Baxter's behavior became more erratic. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. He sat at the foot of my bed, ears perked, eyes darting around the room, watching. Every night at exactly 3:13 a.m. he would start growling. At first I stayed in bed. Then, one night, I got up. I turned on my phone's flashlight and scanned the room. Nothing. But as I turned, the closet door creaked open. I stopped breathing. Baxter went wild. He lunged at the closet, barking and snapping at empty air. I grabbed the door and slammed it shut, but the moment I did, a cold breath brushed against my ear, and a voice: "He sees me." Chapter 5: The Final Warning. I was done. I called a priest, a psychic, even a paranormal investigator. They all said the same thing. Something is in your house, your dog knows, and it doesn't want to be seen. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, Baxter curled at my side, his body tense, waiting. 3:13 a.m. Baxter shot up. His ears twitched, his body stiffened, and then for the first time, he whimpered. I reached for him, but he backed away, his tail tucked. And then I saw it, the figure in the corner, black, motionless, watching. And then it moved, straight toward me. Baxter lunged, snapping, snarling. And then, the lights flickered. The figure was gone, and Baxter was shaking. But his eyes, they were still locked on the empty space, like it was still there, watching, waiting, and whispering, "He sees me." Epilogue. The new home. I moved out the next morning. Took nothing with me but Baxter and a few essentials. I didn't look back. But every night at 3:13 a.m. Baxter still wakes up and growls. Not at me, not at the door, but at the empty corner of the room. As if something followed us, as if something is still watching. And every night, I wonder, what would have happened if Baxter hadn't been there? What if I had been completely alone? And what if I still am? The door that only appears when I'm alone. Doors are supposed to lead somewhere. But what if one appears when it shouldn't? And worse, what if it only appears when you're alone? Chapter 1: The First Time I Saw It. It started on a Tuesday. I came home from work, exhausted, ready to collapse on the couch and mindlessly scroll through my phone until I passed out. But the moment I stepped inside my apartment, I felt it. Something was off. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately sense that something isn't right? That was me. At first I thought maybe my landlord had come in for maintenance or something. Maybe the air felt different because someone else had been here. But then, I saw it. At the end of my hallway, where there should have been nothing but a blank wall, there was a door. A simple wooden door. White paint. A brass doorknob. Old-looking. Like it had been there for years. But I knew my apartment. I had lived here for 4 years. That door had never been there before. And yet, there it was. Chapter 2. The door disappears. I stared at it, my heart hammering. Was I imagining this? Maybe I was just too tired. I dropped my bag and took a cautious step forward. Slowly, carefully. I reached out, and then my phone rang. I jumped, my heart practically slamming into my ribs. Fumbling, I grabbed my phone and answered. It was my friend Mark. "Dude, you okay?" he asked. "You sound weird." I swallowed, glancing back at the door. It was gone. The hallway was back to normal. No door. No sign that anything had changed. Yeah, I said, shaking my head. Just tired. Maybe that was it. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Chapter 3. It only appears when I'm alone. Over the next few days, I kept my eye on that spot. Nothing happened. Not when Mark came over for drinks. Not when my neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, stopped by to chat. Not even when I invited my brother over to crash for the weekend. But the moment I was alone, the door returned. Always in the same place. Always looking older than before. And every time I was too afraid to touch it. Too afraid to see what was on the other side. But that was before the knocking started. Chapter 4. Someone or something knocks. It happened late at night. I was in bed half asleep when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I sat up. It was coming from the hallway, from the door. My blood turned to ice. I held my breath, waiting. Knock, knock. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't angry. It was gentle, like someone was waiting for me to answer. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just waited. And then the doorknob turned. I bolted out of bed, grabbed my phone, and flipped on the flashlight. But by the time I reached the hallway, the door was gone. Chapter 5. I opened the door. I tried to ignore it. I really did, but the door kept coming back, and the knocking became louder. So one night I made a decision. I was going to open it. I stood in front of it, heart hammering. I raised my hand and turned the knob. The door swung open with a creak, and beyond it was nothing. No room, no hallway, just darkness, a void. Like stepping through it would mean falling forever. Then something moved, a shadow, something waiting inside. And before I could react, a hand reached out. Chapter 6. The other side, I slammed the door shut. I pressed my back against it, breathing hard. My hands were shaking. Something was in there. Something wanted me to step inside. I backed away slowly, and that's when I saw it. The scratches. Deep, jagged claw marks on the inside of the door, as if someone or something had been trying to get out. That was the night I decided I had to leave. Chapter 7. It follows me. I moved, a new apartment, new city, fresh start. I told myself the door wouldn't find me here, that it was part of the old apartment, that it was over. But last night, I woke up at 3 a.m., and in the corner of my bedroom, there was a door. Epilogue. The final warning. I don't know what it wants. I don't know where it leads, but I do know one thing. It only appears when I'm alone, and one day, I might not be able to stop myself from opening it.